Hello, welcome to another episode of Soul Sessions. I'm Deborah, and I'm here with Robert, and we are the founders of Creative Mind. And we are introducing a new series this month.
A new series, yes.
And the series is How to Succeed Without Losing Your Soul.
That's a reference, of course, to the gospel, which says, what does it profit a man if he should gain the whole world but lose his soul? So
there's a lot of conflict between spiritual people being successful, and that comes from that. Whether you're organized religion or spiritual but not religious, there's a lot of that conflict, even if it's not conscious.
That's right, because it's part of the culture, part of the religion, part of the kind of the socialization that most of us go through.
And actually successful people, if you think about all the movies, they did research, and 90% of the wealthy people in movies are portrayed as villains. So unconsciously we're getting that message that money's bad, success is bad. So, let's start with defining what is success and how we measure it.
Yeah, so success has many, many meanings to many, many people, and rightly so, because everyone has to define success for themselves. But certainly in a cultural sense, in a community sense, we're given mixed messages, right? We're told that success means having a lot of money, prestige, material, so forth.
The big house with the granite countertops and then also success when I was younger was defined in my family by getting married and having babies. As a woman, that was your role, and there's something, you're not a successful person. And then it's also looked upon even as women, even in this modern age, there's this stigma around women pursuing success and not having children. And the culture is always asking, well, why aren't you having children? And why didn't you? It's like, you missed out. I don't care if you're the president of an international bank and, multi-billionaire, but you don't have kids. Like, what happened? And so there's a lot of that. And then also the pressure on men that's the only way they basically match in society. They say that women are looking for success objects and men are looking for sex objects. It's that funny but not so funny cultural pressure.
Anything that's funny, there's a grain of truth in it. So there's a grain of truth in that. But we also get the message. I remember in elementary school, they would tell us you have to study hard so you can get a good job. Which is not necessarily a success message. It's more like a working message, that you're going to be a worker. And so they indoctrinate us very early on, not in a wrong way or not in a conscious way, but that's kind of the message that we get from the teachers, the principal, and parents often, that you are going to be a good worker. Well,
I think I got a different message because in my high school, junior high, I was in the homemaker class, typing. We took typing, and this, of course, I'm kind of showing my age a little bit, in the 70s and 80s, typing, and then also sewing, and we were in those classes. And really weren't pushed for college. In my culture, we have a very middle class home. And I remember I was at the San Gennaro Festival in New York City, and I was in my 20s. I was probably like 22 or 23, and all my friends were getting married. All of them were ready to get married and have babies, and I was still single. And I went to the little tarot reader, and I said, "Tell me my future." And she said, "You are going to be a very successful businesswoman, and you won't meet your true love until midlife." And I cried. I was like, I don't want to be a successful business person. So in me, my personal, so we all have this different take. Some women are pushed to succeed by their family, what their family values, education. But my family valued love and being a mom and all those things. So I just remember that idea that, oh no, I don't want to be a successful businesswoman. But that changed later in life. So how do we really measure success? It's really this idea, do we measure it by the, whether it's money or social status, Or success could be how much you give to the community. You can be the head of the church and you're doing all this nonprofit. Like that could be defined as success. So we're not just talking about just being financially successful, but think about that. How are you measuring a successful life? Like, did I succeed in life?
Yeah, well, we know relationships are important for human beings. Health is very important. You know, people talk about how if you have your health, you have everything. Definitely a big value, but most people don't recognize it until they lose their health, that they see its value.
But I think with success, financial success, don't you think that there's sort of a survival mechanism? I mean, there's social survival with relationships, but financial success is, I don't want to be out on the streets. I mean, there really is this strong, like, deeper survival drive to make it and not be in financial ruin.
Yes, but there's not an evolutionary mechanism for excess. That one is socially constructed because the research shows if you have your needs met, if you have a food, shelter, a basic kind of survival stuff, you're pretty much happy. You can be very happy. You can be the happiest you can be with that, just with that. As money increases, happiness does not increase. So it's not they don't correlate exactly like, as more money, the more money you get, the happier you are. That's not the case. The happy curve levels off, and the money curve can still keep going up, but it doesn't increase happiness.
And then people just sort of keep chasing that more happiness, almost like a drug, that if I get more successful, it has to be, okay, it's not here yet. I must not be successful enough, and that drives people. So let's talk about the importance of success, because it's not bad to pursue success, because I believe that, well, we're in a material world, the physical world, the Eastern philosophy calls Maya, which is this changing world, but it's all driven by the idea of more life, like more growth, more like this expansive experience that we're having here in this apparent reality. So when we're not pursuing something, when we're stagnated, it's almost as if, when we talk with our clients and students about what their biggest fear is, the biggest fear always comes down to a wasted life.
Yeah, so if we define success from a more enlightened space, it's about doing what you love, meaning your purpose, fulfilling your sense of mission in life, right? That you're doing what really lights you up, what you love to do, and you're contributing to society, to the world, to make it a better place. If you can make money at that, of course, that's the ideal. Yeah, because then you can devote yourself to that higher purpose full time, and you don't have to kind of spend time paying the rent. Or getting money for the rent and those kind of things. Someone
told me when I first started as an entrepreneur that, do you want to work full time and then do your thing as a hobby because you feel like it's helping people, so you should give it away for free, they shouldn't charge? Wouldn't you be a better service to them if that's all you do, instead of you just do it a little time on the weekends and then be stressed out during the week doing something you hate just to pay the bills? Wouldn't it be great to do what you love and let it be abundant? And I love that idea. So let's talk about, why do so many people lose their soul? Especially people I've seen in the coaching industry, even the burnout from the healthcare industry too, and therapy. People are just burnt out from the pressures of continuing and trying to keep up. And why does that happen? Why do people who start off with a great intention lose their soul on the way and like kind of
they
disconnect?
Don't really lose their soul.
Well, you know what
course,
I'm saying.
But,
they just lose their connection to that. Not lose the connection, but not engage with their soulful work in a way. Be conscious of that soulfulness that it serves.
Yeah, they're dissatisfied. Was a few years ago, there was some research worldwide. They surveyed workers. And it turns out the majority are not engaged in what they're doing. In other words, they show up for the job.
Like 80% or something, isn't it?
Something like that. But they show up for the job, but it's not what they want to be doing. They'd rather be doing something else. So they're not engaged. And then a smaller percentage is actually disengaged, meaning they're kind of sabotaging their position in some form or
almost
another.
like hoping to be fired.
Almost like that, yes. The state of the working world is not in very good shape.
Well, and we're conditioned to be workers. Most of us weren't raised in a silver spoon and having all, inheritance and all those things. We're raised to work for our money. And what I found is for me and for a lot of my colleagues and friends and people I know that are entrepreneurs, they can't turn that switch off, that I have to work hard for money. And they end up basically making the money the more important part of their mission. And I remember when I first started out, there was this kind of hierarchy of coaches. And if you were, or business owners, and if you were you were a newbie, and you were kind of flailing and you didn't know what you were doing, everyone was like, oh, they're a newbie. And then you become a 6-figure coach, and all of a sudden you have this, like, you got an award or something that you reached a threshold. And then there's this 7-figure coach, and now it's an 8-figure coach. And it's just the number driven, how much money you make defines your success versus how many people are you really saving? Are you really, not saving, but helping? And are you really doing what you love? I mean, there's nothing wrong with achieving and wanting money. But I think what happened for me, and I could say from my own personal experience, I got caught up in that. And I felt like I wasn't successful until I reached that 7-figure mark. And I remember just seeing a coach, and he had all these people on stage that were all successful. And I was like, I want to be on that stage. And it was very ego driven. And it had nothing to do with helping people. It was like, I got to kind of fit in or achieve. And it comes from those early days of trying to get an A on your report card, fitting in. And there is, don't you think there's that kind of drive in the world, is that we have to prove our worth through our success?
Yes, and ultimately what we want to do, once we find our purpose, we want to have money serve our purpose. Because then we're not working for the money, which is the kind of the trap that most people fall into. And we know that when the rewards are externalized motivation decreases creativity, decreases satisfaction, because you're not engaged anymore. It's not about the actual activity of work. You're doing it to gain something external. And most people feel it, that's not a good way to do it. That's not a good way to work.
And I know for me, when I, reached certain levels, it was like, oh, okay, I'm still me. I haven't it didn't magically make everything just be easier. It's just these false metrics that we follow to prove to ourselves that we're worth it. And what I love that quote that I think it's Lao Tse who says that the victorious warrior brings the victory to the battle versus gets the battle afterwards. So it's as if you're already successful just because you're stepping out and doing something that you love. And if we come from that attitude, it doesn't matter if we make $100,000 a year or $1 million or $1 trillion a year. We're doing what we love, and that should be the most important piece.
Yeah, we know intrinsically motivated individuals are a lot happier doing what they're doing, because it's not about the money. It's not about the prestige. It's not about the praise.
They're doing sports car.
They're doing it out of love, out of devotion, out of service to others.
And it's creating a culture. If you look on Instagram, I mean, we were watching there was kind of the facade or the persona of these Instagram influencers where they're renting out mansions for a couple hours for $500, and then they do their pictures in there, and it looks like they're living that lifestyle. And it's very confusing for a lot of people, because I think people think, oh, that's what success looks like. And if I just work a little harder, I can have all those things. And then they're impressed by people that don't have, are really basically doing a little smoke and mirrors. And I think it's just about, maybe it's the Western culture. Why do you
Yes.
think? What do you think causes that psychologically? Like, why do people need to like
Yes.
show off what they have? Or
Well, the biggest mistake people make about money, both rich and poor, on both sides or all sides, I'd say, is that they think money has an external value. In other words, they think that the value is in the money, the gold, the bank, that kind of externalizing again. Money is neutral, and it's socially constructed, which means we made it up. We created it out of our mind, and so the value is in our mind, not in the money. And when you externalize it, you're making a mistake already. You're off the tracks. In other words, you're not working in reality. You're being driven by conditioning. So it's that carrot that you keep chasing that you never reach because it doesn't give you satisfaction.
because the ego thinks that the money will give you something, but it doesn't have anything in it. So it's like fighting a shadow on the wall, or trying to grab a shadow on the wall that or air,
chasing a mirage.
Yeah, chasing a mirage. Yeah. And so it's culturally driven. It's also a family. If you have a family that a lot of people say the fear of taking risks and going out and doing what they love. The reason they don't start, or they hold themselves back and take little tiny steps, is because of the shame of failure. And so this kind of idea that if you're successful, there's a pride in that. And I know you read in one of your yoga books this idea of a false dignity that comes with a superficial success.
Yeah, and there's a big taboo about money. So people talk as if, oh yeah, we're open about money, and we know all this knowledge and have all this knowledge about money, but we don't. Most families do not talk about money in a meaningful, educational way. It's all quiet, hush hush. If they do, it's mostly, like you say, boasting or kind of one man. What do they call it? One-upmanship. Yeah, trying to say I'm better than you and so forth. Not in a creative, meaningful way. The schools certainly don't talk about money, and there are many professions. I came
therapy,
through psychology, which was a therapy school. They don't talk about money. It's a bad word. I
went to, when we were in New York and you were getting your postdoc, and I went to this spiritual networking event in White Plains, and I went there and they said, okay, now just remember the rules are you can't talk about how much money you make or what you charge. I'm like, why? Wouldn't that inspire people? They were like, no, you'll get kicked out. I'm like, what? This is a business. This is business. So it's this idea that business and spirituality can't mix. And if it does, then you're evil or you're taking advantage of, there's this dark side to it. And I think money is really a gift. It's divine. It's a tool. It's not a source of self-esteem. It's not a source of pride. It's not a source of social kind of fitting in. It's more, it's a tool that we can use, that we have access to, but we have to realize that it's actually the cause is in our mind. The money is that we create in our life is caused by our mind, not by working really hard out there to make it happen.
It's definitely a tool. So which means you can use it to build a hospital, a school, a community, or you can use it to build bombs, like we see every day in the news. The money is neutral again. It is the mind behind it that matters, how it's going to use that money.
And so when we go back to success, if we want to live our purpose, we want to come here for what we really want to do, because the world operates in this financial monetary exchange. We don't trade a goat for a chicken anymore, or I'll work on the farm for a week and then you'll give me some food.
Some communities, they still do that.
Maybe, yeah, but it's not common. And so if you're working with someone who lives in another country and you're doing Zoom sessions, you're not going to say, well, I'll ship a sheep to you and then you're going to ship back. It's just a way we trade and the way we understand. But in itself, it doesn't really have any value except the value you put on it. And so this brings me to, which I love that you introduced me to, is the 4 human pursuits. And this is from Eastern philosophy. And so let's talk about those 4.
Okay. I'm going to have to translate them. So I don't remember the Sanskrit
Kama?
words themselves. Okay.
I think I remember. Kama?
Okay. Kama, which means pleasure, enjoying life in general, enjoying food, sex, work, just having a good time.
Happiness.
Being happy to be alive.
Mm-hmm. And it's the sense pleasures of life.
Yes.
And then there's Artha, which I remember because I always think of Arthur, that movie with Dudley Moore. He was the rich guy, so I remember Artha meaning success. Artha.
Yes, very much more like we measure success in the West, about money, about business, about being a successful entrepreneur, having material wealth.
Mm-hmm. And then there is Dharma, which is also another word used in Buddhism, but this is in Eastern Hinduism. Dharma means purpose.
Very much so. Spiritual purpose, spiritual duty, following a spiritual path, a spiritual law. All those, and those 3, of course, go together.
Yes, they're not separate.
Yeah. Whereas I think in modern cultures we've split them, and we think of money as a separate element, then spirituality, then kind of enjoying or being happy about our sensory pleasures.
Or spiritual people think you have to not use sexual pleasure, not have any kind of pleasure in your emotions, and kind of like just even overeating or indulging in beautiful wine and food and sweets and all those things, and you have to shut that out because now you're rising above any kind of human enjoyment. There's something like we'll get too attached to it. The same thing with money. I have to push that away. So if you do that with a sense of purpose, like my purpose as a spiritual being having a human experience, I'm going to have those human approaches to life as well. I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm not saying we should all drink and have sweets. It's probably not healthy. But I'm saying that we don't want to demonize just enjoying life and just sitting back and having a beautiful meal, or enjoying sex, enjoying things that are pleasurable for you.
Amen.
And then also money is the...
But there's one more.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to wrap up with the success, is that your success can be aligned with your ego, or it can be aligned with that purpose, your dharma, which is that it's your duty, your sacred duty to do what you love, something that's fulfilling to you. So if you just pursue the lower ones, just the sense pleasures and the success on those level, you will feel unsatisfied. You can have, as many lovers as you want. You can have all the food you want. You can have all the success you want. But that excess, without a spiritual grounding, it'll feel unfulfilling. It'll never be enough. But the Dharma, it almost like it takes you away, or it helps you remove the attachment to those things, and realize that if you can make it about your soul, purpose to experience these things in this life. And then the 4th one is moksha, which is my favorite. It sounds like a mocha frappuccino, but moksha is enlightenment. It's a state of higher awareness.
Yeah, it is the ultimate freedom and release from kind of the binding element of life, the attachment, like you were saying, or that karmic debt that we incur as we act in the world. So yeah, together then you see a complete life. You see a more comprehensive sense of what is a successful life. One that you enjoy, obviously. Not in excess, but you find pleasure in just being alive. The other one is that, you have to make money, or you have to participate in society and use money as a tool to serve your higher purpose, and then to help others. How can we help others if we ourselves are in need? We can't. Even Vivekananda, the great Swami, said, a religion that doesn't or can't or won't help a poor person is no religion at all. That's not a spiritual practice. You have to be able to help others around you.
And if you think of kama, that pleasure, if you're just focused on success and you're working 80 hours a week, you're like, I think the pandemic has really awakened a lot of people, that great, the great resignation, where people are saying, do I have to deal with that boss anymore? I'm not really enjoying what I do. And now I can work virtually. What if I become an entrepreneur? What if I change my life? And we're seeing a lot of that in our coach training. A lot of people are saying, I think I want to be a coach now. I want to change careers, because all that money is not going to make you happy. Money, it's like laying in a bed of money is not going to be like, ooh, this feels really good. It's just paper. It's just an idea. Where we have a body and we have emotions and we have these beautiful senses, sensory systems in our body to enjoy life, our eyes to see the beautiful nature, a touch to touch other human beings. I mean, food and that kind of kinesthetic feeling of having something delicious and nourishing ourselves. There's so much to life that we don't want to just lock it away. We don't want to only do that, but we want to have all four in balance. And then the goal is, if you can have them all in balance, if the other three, doesn't moksha naturally, the pursuit of enlightenment naturally start to help you balance out the other three?
Yeah, because ultimately, what do all four have in common? The mind. It all goes back to the mind. So they're not really distinct from each other. There are different activities, different kind of areas that we identify in life, but they're all one. Work can be play, work can be spiritual. Serving a meal or enjoying a meal can be a spiritual practice as well. So it's all connected. It's simply that it's good to break them down to see. Like you were saying, how do we measure these things? How do we define them? It's a good way to look at it, right? That am I imbalanced by enjoying my life and being happy, as well as doing my higher purpose, in that sense of sacred duty, that I'm also spiritually grounded, and then also moving towards liberation and enlightenment.
So as we move, because we're energetic, moving beings in this world, we're always moving towards something. We can't. We're not as static, and so we can only move forward. That's all we can do. If we try to stay the same and think, well, I'm going to play it safe, you'll feel this sense of like unsettledness. That there's really nowhere you can go to just shut life off, where you can just shut life off and stay in your little, maybe go to a cave somewhere in the Himalayas, but I'm sure that's probably not going to be as fulfilling to some people. So there's like, you don't have a choice. In the Gita, this is what Krishna said to Arjuna. He said, this is your duty. You have to fight this war. You can't just sit and give up. And so we're born in this life. We're born in movement. We're born to grow. We're born to live. And if we align with that, that's what will fulfill us, is that we're moving towards something. And moving toward it without attachment is the key. So very simply, you can have all the desserts you want, all the delicious sense pleasures, as long as you're not attached. You can have all the money and success as long as you're not attached and you're really dedicating everything to that dharma, the purpose of, I'm here to live my life fully. I've been given this life, this precious human life, and I'm going to live it. I'm going to make the most of myself. And that, in the pursuit of wisdom, the higher wisdom, will help you have all those wonderful experiences in life, the sense pleasures and the financial success, and being satisfied. And I think that's really what people are searching for, but they're searching for it in one little pocket or the other, and very externalized versus I'm bringing the happiness, I'm bringing the victory, I'm bringing the joy to everything I do.
That's a good way to kind of wrap it up in this kind of one vision of everything we do in human life.
Yeah, so just to repeat, we have kama, which is from, you've all heard Kama Sutra, the pleasure, not only sexual pleasure, but all pleasures in life. Going to look at a beautiful painting in a museum or seeing nature. The moksha, artha, which is the money, success, material wealth, making yourself a part of society. Dharma, which is your purpose. And moksha, which is liberation from the world. And when we say liberation from the world, it doesn't mean we disconnect, but we're not just in ego and attached. It's an integration of the world and our spiritual nature as one. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We have more in our series on how to succeed without losing your soul. We're going to talk a little bit more about purpose. We're going to talk about a little bit about money and conditioning and how you can move toward that enlightened state of being and have it all, basically, and be fulfilled. So see you next week.
Stay well.
On Soul Sessions.
Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.